Welcome to the enLIGHTenUP podcast. I'm Lisa Watson and will be joined by my co-hosts Nicole Frolick and Brian Koenigberg. The enLIGHTenUP podcast is a weekly show that provides an unconventional and refreshing spin on spirituality, where three friends and weekly guests share informative, fun, and usually off-the-wall conversations. Unlike others, we provide fringe and skeptical viewpoints on all topics, because our experience has taught us that the echo chamber is a boring place from which to learn. So regardless of where you are in your spiritual journey, we can promise you you're going to find a place to fit in here. So we invite you to grab a drink and listen in on our casual, entertaining, and hopefully enlightening conversation. And enLIGHTenUP is a self-funded podcast, so if you would like to help us to continue to be able to produce, enhance, and expand the show for our audience, then please send your support using the link in the show notes, or go to our website, enlightenup.us, and check out our merchandise shop, where you can purchase merchandise that will allow you to express some spiritual humor. You may also show your support by leaving us a review on iTunes and following us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Thank you all so much for listening and supporting us, and now let's jump right into the episode.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the enLIGHTenUP podcast. I am your co-host, Nicole Frolick, and I am also joined by my beautiful co-host, Lisa Watson. Today, we have a new guest on the show. Jeremy Lasman is a former SpaceX Technologist who worked with Elon Musk to reinvigorate the public's excitement for space travel again. He is a business graduate of Chapman University and creator of the groundbreaking comic book franchise Mania. Jeremy's sole work, Imagination Technology, provides a powerful platform to upgrade negative realities from survival to peace and thriving passion, which nourishes life on all levels. Applying his love of professional wrestling, Jeremy's energy and mission is larger than life. You can find him contributing his genius to pioneering ventures, inspiring from the stage, and creating in coffee shops around the world. Jeremy, welcome to the enLIGHTenUP podcast. How are you doing today?
Thank you. I'm doing fantastic. I just love hearing that reflected back to me. It can't get over it sometimes.
I know. Sometimes our own bios, it's like, wow, I sound really good.
Yeah.
So, professional wrestling, I mean, with everything that you're doing, how does that integrate into all of this?
Well, I've been watching it growing up. It was like that one friend that was always there, even when I, felt like a loner, didn't really, fit in, didn't really have school spirit, just kind of being that rebel. And wrestling was always that constant in my life. And as I got older, it became a study. I would study the intricacies of where the science and the art came together for a performance, a live performance, entertainment show, sport, and it really contributed a lot to how I to my research, to my work, and to how I support people.
Oh, wow. So,
Yeah.
have you been able to ascertain any cool life lessons that kind of merge the wrestling with technology?
Merge the wrestling with the technology. Well, it's in the big picture. For me, the big picture is where it's at, and I think that wrestling is a perfect example of passion personified. And when you look at what passion is and kind of how I understand it, um, as as that the convergence of the left brain and the right brain, the science and the art, um, that's how I got to my work, Imagination Technology, because I look at passion as like the fuel of the imagination, and the more that you can open yours up and really enhance it and purify it in a sense, the better that your whole body, mind, spirit, technology works. And I kind of apply that metaphor to
Oh, wow. So, what is imagination technology?
that. So it is uh, how I look and mm, synthesize the separate silos of knowledge that we were kind of taught in public school to separate. Um, So by tearing down what we think of as our separate knowledge bases and let them play, imagination technology kind of came about as what I see as the next level of evolution. Because if you look at the progression from the industrial age, where we start to get the technology, to the information age, which we're in right now, information technology, which is basically how in it like ones and zeros and data and information, right? So the next level to that is imagination technology. It's when we transcend the binary or the duality, and we go into quantum, into more possibilities, and into more higher frequencies of reality.
Wow. And so how does the imagination technology take you from the information technology in of the binary field into quantum? Like how does that work? Or what sort of technologies do you use?
um, well, the way that I kind of look at that, and we're already kind of there. It's just the more self-awareness to understand it. So if you're in a black and white reality, where it's closer to closer to the animal consciousness than human consciousness, you know good and bad, and it's black and white, right? So there's good and there's bad. But as our intelligence evolved, as we become more self aware as a species, all of a sudden, each of those words have different meanings for different people, because we're in a subjective, a subjective reality, right? And once you kind of extrapolate that, you look at good can have either a positive or negative charge, and bad can have a positive or negative charge. So all of a sudden from there, we've went from two possibilities to four possibilities, just by understanding that the charge, the emotional charge of a word, is, it can either be negative or positive. And from that we expand our mind to be aware of how to um, how to transform or alchemize what we think of is rigid and stuck and very maybe linear, to more expanded possibilities, and more choice, more freedom.
Wow. Okay. So this idea of passion,
Hmm.
um, it's so interesting because I'm
Hmm.
sure you've come up with this as well. People in this day and age are struggling to find their passion.
Mm, yes.
So how do you use this tech? Does this technology stimulate? Does the imagination technology stimulate passion,
Mm,
or does it work with the So this idea of stimulating passion is
hmm.
something that a lot of people um s- like are struggling with.
Yeah.
And how do you overcome that, or how have you ever experienced that where you've lacked passion and then had to rediscover it?
Yeah, that was basically the inspiration for getting into personal development, was that I felt like I didn't know what my passion was. I felt like I wasn't creative and all of that. And I think to answer your question, it's kind of maybe not the answer that you're expecting. It might be able to sound a little counterintuitive, but to get to the passion, it's actually a game of subtraction instead of addition. So we're kind of trained to think of, like, when we read a book about, like, even like how to find your passion or how to find your purpose, we're given all this information, and we kind of are taught, like, oh, like, I need to, like, add things in order to become better, and then I can become, like, become, and you're like adding all of this stuff onto your plate. But with imagination technology, and the way that I work with clients and have courses designed, is it's all about subtraction. So that the more that you could subtract, the more that you get to the natural state of your passion, because you've eliminated all of the BS, all of the masks, all of the armor, all of the inefficient identity structures that you were taught to and conditioned to carry in your body, carry in your mind, uh, that are all based off of time. And once you subtract, once you learn the game of subtraction, then you just get to this natural state where passion is more effortless and flow.
Oh, wow. I totally love that. And I think that sometimes the things that we feel are counterintuitive
Hmm.
are actually exactly what is needed. Like, for instance, the same thing can be said about pain. You
Yes.
intuitively want to lean out of it,
Hmm.
but what you really need to do is lean in. So,
Hmm.
this idea of when it's coming to discovering your passion, it's not about looking everywhere, it's about taking away so you can reveal what's already there.
Yes. Yes, precisely.
So when you say taking away, do you mean like the busyness, like maybe you're doing too much or you're spreading yourself too thin,
Mhm.
taking more time to kind of let there be quiet?
Yeah,
What kind of things do you recommend being subtracted?
so that's definitely a great call for in the physical, like your physical space, your physical time of your activities, and the way that you're doing your work, and that. But if you understand the inner, it's all about the inner game, and I'm sure your listeners understand that this is all about enlightening. So uh enlightenment and all of that, it's all an inner game. And so the subtraction that I really call on is to to really investigate and inquire how much time you're carrying in a certain emotion, in a certain thought, in a certain feeling, in the burdens, to investigate how much time is actually contained in that, and then applying the understanding that you aren't in the time to help release it and remove it.
What feelings do you find with the people that you work with are most prevalent to where they're
Mm.
spending the most time?
Ah, well, the worry, anxiety, and stress. Those are pretty much the first things that usually get cleared, because those are like how we're taught to live. Is like you gotta be worried about the future. You gotta always be protecting the survival, and all of that kind of contributes to a lot of stress, especially if you're sensitive. Um, so those things, once you again can understand that the body is not actually in time, then it makes it easier to see it more clearly instead of being inside of the anxiety and inside of the stress. You kind of zoom out, you get that 20,000-foot view, and see it for what it really is. It's just a thought. And then it again, you can remove it much easier because you find the choice. Do I want to continue carrying this? Do I want to continue believing this inefficient thing?
So the subtraction really is all about thinking. It's about the thoughts. Because,
Hmm.
like you said, it is definitely all internal game. Our outside reality is only a reflection of our
Yes.
internal state of being. So it's paying attention to those thoughts and getting rid of the ones that are taking up too much energy.
Exactly. That's what I feel and have experienced as the most direct. Of course, you can focus on the external problems and kind of be a whack-a-mole with the things that you see outside. But if you want the most direct, the most efficient, it is going to the root, going towards the inner uh, expression of these things, and then you'll find that the external reality kind of fixes itself really fast.
So how does the how does the
Mm.
imagination play a role in
Ooh,
this?
that's a juicy question. Um, so if I can try to paint a picture with the words here, uh, once we go and I'm going to try to keep this as non-intellectual. I want to keep it very simple. Uh, as soon as we go from the body to the mind, we're actually going from the third dimension to the fourth dimension. So the mind doesn't actually exist in the physical reality. That we're again taught or kind of unconscious to the mixed experience that the mind and body are kind of like one experience, and that causes a lot of confusion.
Yeah, like people are taught that their mind is their brain, but it's not.
Yes, yes. So the next kind of quote unquote quantum leap to understand what the imagination uh, is to think about it like we've gone again from the body to the mind. Now we're in the inner game. We're in the dimension of time. And now I want the audience to, or you guys to imagine that the mind becomes this like cube, like a three-dimensional cube within this space. And that could also be a prison cell, depending on if you're really not free of your mind, and the mind is you're kind of a victim to the mind. You're kind of stuck in that cell. But if you imagine around this box that there is an infinite space around this box that makes this box like a little pebble, that's the imagination. It's the field of infinite possibilities, of which then the mind, that little box, becomes what we think we are.
I love that. So imagination is anytime we're kind of tapping into fifth dimension and beyond.
Exactly. Exactly. And again, when you look at it from the subtraction, instead of like, oh, what do I need to add in order to like get there? The subtraction is just getting closer and closer to the innocence of the child state, which is pre-identity, right? Pre-mind. They're very pure in the innocence. And that's because they're playing within that infinite field themselves. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You're
It
talking
totally
to
makes sense.
you're talking to two girls who
Mm.
explore the child self very much.
Yes, yes,
Well, it's
yes.
that I am nothing, I am no one, I am no time. It's
Hmm.
that space.
Timeless. Yes, yes.
Mhm.
So as you okay, so I liked how you brought in this idea of the cube being like a prison of the mind, or the mind being a prison in a sense. Which you're right, many of us fall victim to it, regardless if we have all of this awareness or not. There are times where you fall prey to that mentality
Hmm.
and that
Hmm.
belief system. And so, how do you help people tap into their imagination to break free of that?
It's through the application of quantum mechanics. So by again releasing the belief in linear time. So once you get clear of your belief that you are just one timeline, past, present, and future, and that can suddenly expand and become more nonlinear and multidimensional. Again, because if you're too identified with the body, then you're just this physical body, and that's how you interface with your life. If you think you're just the mind, then it happens, but in a different dimension, and you become more mental. You stuck in the mental realm. But if you can understand multidimensionally that you're not just 3D, you're not just 4D, you're not even just 5D, but you're uh, the infinite funneling down into a finite, you can start to play with possibilities. So, in simple, I show people more choice. More
Mm.
choice gives people the choice. Without the choice, they don't have the awareness or the the conscious ability to choose their own evolution. But once you paint a picture of like, here's where you think you are, but here's another choice. Would you like to make that choice? Would you like to clear that time? Would you like to get out of the stress? And more often than not, or always, it's like hell yes. And then boom, they make that choice. And it's so to me, the freedom is in the possibilities because then you can choose new things.
Yeah, and a lot of people feel like they don't have those choices.
Hmm.
They don't even
Exactly.
realize they're programmed to believe in such limitation.
Exactly.
I really
Exactly.
like that because it goes back to the inner child where children don't limit themselves from choices, when
It-
they're, well, at least toddlers until we, beat it out of
right. Until
them.
we sandwich them into reality versus make believe and tell them don't go into the make believe anymore.
Exactly. But
Hmm.
just, and I've been practicing that as well as reminding myself that I have choices. That,
Yes.
and when you're doing inner child work, it's very comforting for your inner child to remind them that we have choices. We don't have
Yes.
to be locked into this. Like we can try this and then we can change our mind if we decide that it's not something that we want to do.
Hmm. Hmm. Yes.
That
Yes.
that is the ultimate understanding of what it means to be limitless. It doesn't mean that you have no limits, because then by the definition of no limits, you're limiting yourself to never having limits.
Hmm.
So it's the idea of knowing, like Lisa said, you can change your mind at any given time whenever you want.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's empowering. And a lot of people feel guilty for that.
Mhm. Tell me about it. Yes. Yeah.
You know, I've been babysitting this 3-year-old lately, and the reason that I'm babysitting him is so that I can be around a 3-year-old
Uh,
because I've just felt the need to be around a child of that age, and I
yeah.
just love them, and it helps me practice conscious parenting.
Yes. He's
And
teaching you.
yeah, he's definitely teaching me. And I have two grown sons in their mid to late 20s, so it's been a long time since I've been around small children, and I've learned a lot since then.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was thinking about this yesterday, watching him, and he said he wanted pizza. So we gave him a slice of pizza, and then I cut it, and he was like, "Oh, I don't want it because you cut it. Now it's not in one big piece; it's in small pieces, and I don't want that." And I'm like, "Okay." So his mom's like, "Fine, have the other slice." And I give him that, and then once that comes, he's like, "Yeah, yeah, I don't want it." And I know, like from a parenting point of view, it's so ingrained in us to be like there's something wrong with the child, or like, well, you just said
Mm,
you wanted it. Like, what's
mm,
wrong? Like, why don't you want it now? And like, we put a lot of emphasis on the change of mind. And I sat in that moment, just looking at it for a minute when he said that. And I'm like, yeah, well, you know what? That's okay because you have choices.
hmm.
Like if it were the only thing that we had to eat, and it is what it is or whatever, then that's one thing, but it's not. It's just leftover pizza. So we have choices. And I was just thinking, like, when you're really conscious about what it is that you're saying, and is this coming from an old program and an old belief, and what am I really encouraging in here, and how do I want this child really to see the world and see himself? It's really fascinating to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And that just kind of sparked another answer to one of your questions that kind of relates to all this is the power, the transformative power of curiosity on all fronts. So even just asking him why, he would have felt, you know, be able to just give the answer. Why? Oh, I don't feel like it. Then it's like he's understood, you understand. But the curiosity is so important because that opens up possibilities.
Hmm.
Curiosity.
It's so important. I mean, if you're not curious about anything, you're lacking so much inspiration. Like
Hmm.
you're not inspired. You likely don't feel alive inside to be curious about anything. That is such an important um, feeling or state of being, I should say, to be in,
Yeah.
because it just promotes expansion. It promotes wanting to learn and understand and deepen your awareness.
Yes. Yes. Well said.
So I have a question for you.
Uh,
I don't know if this is going to
Curious.
throw
Yeah.
you for a loop,
Yeah.
Oh,
but I'm
he's
curious.
curious. We're all
um,
curious.
yeah, I'm curious to know if through the imagination work that you've done for yourself, okay, and
Uh-huh.
integrating that in to really break down the barriers of the imprisoned mind belief system.
Hmm.
How, since you are a professional wrestler, you're really interested in professional wrestling. You
I'm
must
not
be
a
very
not a wrestler myself, just a
okay.
fan. Yeah,
Oh, you're just a fan. Oh,
yeah.
okay, so that changes my question then, because I wonder, if you were physically active in that sense, you would be really tuned into your body. And I was
Yes.
just gonna ask you if you've had any experiences where you've felt and witnessed a change in your body due to the imagination technology.
Yes. I mean, just over the last few months, the last year, I have noticed a dramatic change in my physical body uh, through uh, self-image, through just investigating and being curious about self-image and finding out where the shame was. So there has been a lot of transformation in my physical body, a lot, like, less weight as I've lessened my weight, in terms of the amount of negativity I've been carrying against my self image. Um, and it wasn't a lot of, changes in diet or, working out every single day and things, but it was like, cause I'm more rebellious. Like if you tell me like, I can't do something or something's not possible, then I will look into that. and, and so in that rebelliousness, I was like, no, I think the body, if you can find out where the mechanics of the self image are, then you can change your body. Like that's the edge, that's the leading edge of conscious evolution right there. Or one expression of it, one application of it. So yes, I have,
Oh,
and it's amazing.
that's so interesting because I've been discovering something too about weight, but I'm curious about what the mechanics you found for yourself were in shame. If you don't mind sharing, I know that could be maybe too personal, but it might
Oh,
be really helpful
open.
for other people to understand.
Yeah, I'm the last few days. The shame has been, I think, in the collective consciousness. I mean, it's been a major theme in my life, and something that I want to continue to apply my work and content wise. But so I'm going to try to slow down and get into the emotion of this. So the shame in my body, the self image, uh, was really, I think, connected to worthiness, self worth, and self esteem. Um, there, can you ask that question again? I apologize. Can you just ask what you were getting at?
No, absolutely. I'm just curious what the mechanics were for you around discovering what it was with the shame that was um,
Mm.
causing you to like hold on to weight or put on weight,
Ooh,
body perception, all that
body.
stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it just depends on how early we want to go because I was a very neurotic kid, uh, uh, growing up, really neurotic, um, overthinker, highly sensitive. The place where I feel the weight started to carry in terms of the negativity, it is negativity, like that's kind of the answer to your question. It's purely negativity. um but it was around being an unconscious empath. So basically, family, school, and all of that, and people, crowds, being a sponge to energy without knowing it. Because when you're not aware you're an empath, you're taking on all of this energy and you're identifying it as your own. So all of that, I feel, it contributed to the amount of weight that I was carrying, and then turning all of that inward on myself as like a, judgment, and where, comparison to other people, and of course, like the Hollywood ideal, marketing media kind of self images, and where I didn't stack up, height wise, and um, a whole. I mean, all of that really contributes to that,
Mm.
like just shame for feeling different, and feeling like, I don't measure up in some way to some, imaginary ideal that was just propped into me by the things that were around me growing up.
So basically, like taking on everyone else's programs of shame when it
Yes,
comes to like, especially body and fitting in. It's
yes.
interesting. I've discovered something really interesting about weight gain and weight loss, which I've talked about in one of my videos, and I think I mentioned here on the podcast a couple episodes ago. But it resurfaced again, and
Mm,
so I had gained some weight, and for about 6 weeks, and it was about 6 pounds that I just couldn't get rid of. And then finally, when I realized, oh, it's water retention mostly, which means I'm
mm,
holding on to emotions, and I have to discover that. And so I discovered the emotions, and I went in and I did a massive cry fit. Like I just went into meditation, and
mm.
all these tears just came for like a hard hour. And within 12 hours, I had lost all 6 pounds. And so that was very eye opening to me. And I was like, oh wow, I've got to keep that in the front of my awareness, because that's one of the ways my body's definitely communicating with me. And so recently, like, and I kept the weight off for, about almost 2 weeks. And then all of a sudden it just started shooting up again for
Mm,
no major reason. And I was like, okay, this is weird. Again, eating pretty healthy.
mhm,
And so I was like, oh, there's more. There's more surfacing right now. And so I went into meditation, and through my imagination, that's why I wanted to talk about it. It even, like, because I worked on it last night, the last 2 nights, and the weight just dropped right off again uh, after these two meditations. And last night I was working with my inner child, and I was taken through my imagination into a forest, but very different than what the forest is we usually go to. This one was more enchanted, like it
mm,
felt very like Avatar feeling,
mm,
like that, like things were lighting up in the forest and all of that. And I
mm,
could, was very tuned into the bark on my fingers when I was touching this tree, and just kind of leaning against it, sitting on the floor. And then I could hear my inner child walking up. I could hear the crunching of the floor, the forest floor under her feet. And she came and sat with me, and she was just really sad, and she was scared. She was really scared. There was still some emotions that hadn't purged. And I think when we do this work, sometimes we feel like if we do it one time, it all comes out. But I'm sure it's
mm,
like an onion, you take off, you purge, and then it feels good, and then it's ready for a new layer to come out. And I felt
mm,
like, okay, there's more surfacing here. And out of out of nowhere, this angel shows up, mostly all white light. I could kind of see wings, but it was mostly just light. And this angel worked with us, and as this angel worked with us, she brought in new memories of my past, um, of
mm,
where some of this trauma was that I've been needing to release emotion around. And so it was very interesting how like the imagination was allowing me to release the mind's mm, need to suppress the trauma.
mm,
And
mhm,
all of a sudden, some of the memories started coming back. And so it helped me connect with the emotions, and there were more emotions that needed to be released around um, not like feeling like it was my fault, I did something wrong, and
mhm,
also just feeling really um, sad for myself for having to carry a secret for 37 years all by myself, and to
mm,
hold that for so long. And the shame, since we're talking about
mm,
shame, the shame that comes with that. And so there was a lot of emotions that got released. And of course, it's interesting how our bodies communicate with us in many ways. And a lot of the times, um, when it comes to emotions, when we hold on to them, or we try to stuff them down, it can take on the form of weight gain.
mm,
Um, and clearly, um, my inner child now knows that especially when I'm about to depart to go to a beach in 2 days, that I don't want to be gaining weight.
Hmm.
So she got my attention. She knows me well. So, yeah, so it was very interesting to see how the mechanics of shame can show up and manifest in ourselves and how we can relate to the messages.
Yes. Yes.
I think we live in a society that promotes shame, though. Just with TV and Hollywood and magazines and everything like that. Like, you're not good enough.
Hmm. Oh, that's classic marketing, or old
Mm-hmm.
old paradigm marketing. Yeah.
Yeah, and then like the social media these days with likes and
Hmm.
Oh,
engagement
right.
and all of that has kind of, because it's taken over the magazine, like the hard copies that we grew up with,
Hmm.
and taken it to a whole new level where
Yeah.
like you really have to put your best foot forward if you want to be accepted, in the social media world, so to speak.
Hmm.
It's like a whole new level of
Hmm.
acceptance.
Hmm.
Well, acceptance of false self versus acceptance of true self.
Yeah. Precisely.
Wow. So you worked with Elon Musk.
Yes.
What exactly were you doing while you were working for him?
So I was an employee of SpaceX back when it was a startup, and I started assisting the chief information officer in the IT department. And as I grew in responsibility, as the company grew, then I kind of spanned into marketing and did some video production and the broadcast technologies when they have their live rocket launches.
So how do you feel about space travel?
Oh, it's I can't wait to go one day. Truly, I can't wait to go.
How do you feel about conscious space travel?
uh, you mean in like meditation and
Yeah.
astral?
Yeah.
Um, I I believe it. I've experienced a few lucid dreams here and there. Uh, it's it's interesting because my experience with it is not as vivid as some people have expressed. Um, so I can't wait to do it in the physical myself. But yeah, I've definitely experienced some things in the astral for sure.
Ooh, what kind of things?
Um, it's it's interesting because for me, I don't see things. I more feel it. That's how I kind of interface with it. And so it's not really symbols and images for me. So I can't really describe it, but it's definitely just how would I say, like more of a freedom of imagination. I guess that's the best way I can put it. I really don't have any specifics.
So you mentioned in your bio that that the whole space technology and space travel was
Yeah,
to also invigorate like the passion for space travel again within the
yeah,
public.
yeah.
How do you see that shifting right now?
Well, it's interesting because if you go back to when SpaceX had their first successful rocket launch, I think that was 2013, if I remember correctly. Um, the only entities that were launching rockets were governments and countries. So this was the first private company to launch a rocket into space. And um, the space shuttle program had been dead for a few years, or more than a few years prior to that. And so NASA, apart from, of course, the space nerds and all of that, really didn't have a social media kind of excitement to it. And so after the first launch, I worked with Elon to do a music video, which was like kind of unheard of in the space industry because only governments and countries were doing it. Um, and and so he picked this awesome song by Crystal Method, and we made a music video uh, to just show how cool this stuff was. And so from there, it's just like now people are watching the launches. Amazon is creating a rocket now. Jeff Bezos, Virgin, Richard Branson is. So it's definitely getting a lot more exciting. And people are starting to see like, yeah, we're going to Mars. We're going to Mars. So that's pretty amazing to me, at least, because I'm already a space nerd. So
Well, I think the whole idea is important because it when we get back to the topic of imagination,
mm,
if you're not willing to explore what's beyond Earth and what's out there exactly and how what is life really like and you know beyond what we're taught
mm,
to believe, uh, it allows you to really explore imagination in a very infinite way.
yeah,
It's important, I think, like for the public to be interested in that and to not get so caught up in just this reality. As much as this reality is important because this is where we live and this is where we're meant to learn our soul lessons and
yep,
heal, do all of that, but to also draw upon the infinite possibilities of everything that's beyond this one.
yes, yeah. Schoolyard Earth. School. It says schoolyard. Yeah, no, I love that. It's super inspiring the way you put that because exploration into the unknown, uh, the whole Star Trek, Star Trek kind of energy, and the possibilities, the next generation technologies that are going to arise from it, um, and hopefully the aliens that we meet, the nice aliens that we meet along the process.
Yeah, that is definitely one of the, I think anyone who's really into this and is a believer, that's probably one of the major highlights, I think, for many people is just
Yeah.
contact.
Yes.
Um, because the movies teach us very limited aspects of what the beings that are out
Yeah.
there could be like. And of course, when we talk about the quantum reality of infinite possibilities, I think a lot of our minds would be blown by all the different types of life forms out there.
Yeah.
I'm curious, you talk about how your technology upgrades these negative realities from survival to peace and thriving. Do you have a formula or a specific one that you can, like a specific negative reality that you feel a lot of people are in that you can take them out of to survival, from survival to peace and thriving, where they're
Hmm.
finally like nourishing their life versus living malnutrition?
Mm. It's a big wide question because again I'm a big picture guy and I really designed it to be a very like a Swiss Army knife where you can bring anything into it. I think for me in my heart and what I've had to overcome and transform, I go to uh, skepticism and cynicism and pessimism. So it's because you're speaking to like a neurotic guy. So I like that intellect has gone towards the negativity, um, and so those three things are like the the web expansion of doubt and negativity kind of taken to the neurotic level. And so I hope this doesn't sound like I'm avoiding the question, but really on the big picture level, it's the negative worldview. That is what that's how I would answer that question because that kind of goes to the top level. that would really start to water down to everything else in the life, because it's the negative worldview, the way in which you see the whole world. If that's negative, then everything else is going to be negative, and there's going to be really no light in the life. So if you can really get to that perception of how you are seeing and deciphering the world through that negative worldview, that negative filter, that it will instantly change so much, because it's like the main way in which you see reality.
So, I mean, how we perceive the world is how we perceive ourselves.
Hmm.
So, if, for instance, say, abundance is something that a lot of people struggle with, self-worth,
Hmm.
not feeling like they're good enough.
Yeah.
So, if someone were really kind of viewing their reality from a lack-based mentality,
Yes.
from that really limited place, how do you use the imagination to counter that?
So a lack-based reality is actually a negative worldview, and that's why it doesn't feel good, and that's why it doesn't it doesn't reflect back on you good either. Um, so again, if I sound like a broken record, it's subtraction, not addition, which again is counterintuitive to what lack is trying to express as the illusion that it is. But the math checks out on my front, because the lack means that you're carrying negative beliefs on top of your operating system, on top, like in your programming and all of that. And so if you can subtract the lack beliefs and get to the truth of the abundance, then it naturally will flow more effortlessly.
And
And what
how
do
do you
you
go about finding those lack
Yeah,
beliefs?
Hmm.
yeah.
So um, the well, I'll just kind of go through how I do it in my course myself. Um, you go at it not necessarily linearly, but you go at it multidimensionally. So you start in 3D, and you I have a hypothesis for people to kind of experiment with themselves. I'm all about empowering people to experiment themselves. And so once you focus on the body, that the body doesn't exist in time, that is counter to what we believe. And so that would produce all of the emotions that are containing that time. And then within the mind space, the natural state of the mind is empty. And so everything that counters to that would rise up to be seen and to be made aware and to be cleared. And then into the next space of limitlessness, everything that says is lacking, you would be proven wrong based off of the truth of the limitlessness. So that's what I take people through in my course.
Oh, okay, that's cool. That's
It's
really
all
cool.
about, right. It's all about, I always like to say, uh, the samurai level of discipline with yourself to be have allegiance to the truth versus illusion. So if you can have your samurai sword slice all illusions, and you have an allegiance to truth, then you're going to be much faster, much speedier, much more efficient in transformation, because then it's not necessarily about the problems, it's about the illusions that you're believing unconsciously versus the truth.
Hmm. Well, and we think about like the void space, going into the void.
Hmm.
And it's within the void that all creation emerges from. And
Yes.
so it makes sense that, you know, as you get closer and closer to that void space, it's everything, like you say, is falling away. It's subtracting.
Hmm.
And
Yes.
so that, yeah, that makes
All
a lot of
yeah.
sense.
And it's only the false can be kind of removed. The truth can't. The truth is.
It's constant.
Hmm.
Wow. So, curious before we wrap things up,
Yes.
Is there a message that
Mm,
you really love to share with people when it comes to imagination and
mm.
exploring passion?
I think well, the truth versus the illusion, that's a big one. Um, I really love this quote from Muji. He's a spiritual teacher that I watch on YouTube. I really love him because he's even more direct than I am at the truth. um, and when people are on this enlightenment path or self realization or self discovery, and the it's the passion is fire. And he has this quote that says, the fire of self-realization can only burn away what you are not. And so I really love that, because the more that you are choosing passion and presence and truth versus the false and the ego and the illusions, the hotter things are going to get because you're getting closer to that pure passion fire within you. And that fire is going to, the more that you are choosing your truth, the more it's going to feel like it's burning, like that pain, it's going to be burning something that you feel like you need to defend. That survival instinct is like, something's hurting, something's burning, like, what my identity is going to be destroyed, and where am I going to be left? And it's almost like a really violent process if you talk about it like that. But like these tough experiences, if you realize they're burning away what you're not, then you have much more peace to be present as these fires burn away the false, and you're left with more of your pure essence. So that's kind of what that's my message, because
I
that
love
that
that.
is that is when you're getting to the purity of your passion, un undiluted or non-particled by fear. That's
Hmm.
when you get to the purity, when you can get all the particulates of fear out of your passion fuel.
Yeah, and I mean it's known by the ancient tribes and um, that in order to have new growth, you sometimes have to burn down the forest.
Yes. Wow. Wow. Exactly. That's a perfect mirror for what I just said. I love that.
I think
And
identifying your own fears is the hardest part. We're so used to medicating them, and
Mm,
not sitting with them and distracting ourselves from them. That when
yeah.
it comes time to really get real with yourself and sit with
Yes.
yourself and find, it's not a simple process. It's not just like, okay, here I am. Here's the things I'm afraid of. It
Yeah.
takes time, and it, like Nicole said, it's like a onion. There's so many different layers, and you find new fears and new
Yeah.
things all the time.
Mm. Yeah. Yes. Yes. And again, just to kind of like connect that to what I was saying, is if you're treating, I don't want this to sound like uncompassionate, but if you're treating the fears as real, like that they're real things, you're gonna like kind of give them power to express the reality of the narratives and the what if scenarios and everything that the fear has the puppet strings to do within you. But again, if you go back to that truth versus illusion, or love versus fear, really is what it comes down to on a universal level. It's like any fear is an illusion. They're really, if you can be that samurai with it, then it's so much more efficient, because you're going direct. You're going direct all the time, always direct.
yeah, and it's like this idea. I love this idea of the fire burning away, can't burn away what you're not, or burns away what you're not, but it cannot burn away what you are.
Hmm.
because it takes me to the idea of, well, one, of course, the only one who's screaming is the ego
Yep,
in
yep,
that case.
yep.
But it also takes me to the idea of firewalking and how much you can overcome the fear or the belief that you're going to get burned. And if you are in your true power, you can walk through fire unscathed.
Yes, love that.
So it's great, and I love this idea of fire too. I love working with fire. I know I worked with a fire in past lives,
Mm,
um, but I love it because it it has the ability to, like you said, burn away what is not needed anymore, what is not serving, but also give life to what wants to emerge. and
yes.
and 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 the way that you bring in that life force, you breathe into that fire, and you increase the passion. Okay, when we're talking about passion and this idea of fire and passion, it's like when you start tuning into that life force of who you are, you start to breathe that into your own fire and give it more life. And so it's just, I love the metaphor of the fire. I really do.
Mm, hmm
It's very
hmm
strong.
hmm
Well, Jeremy, it was a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us for the hour.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I had so much fun. I love the curiosity, the great questions. That's my element. I love it.
Well, let our audience know how they can get in touch with you or partake in any of your courses or teachings.
Yes, they can go to jeremylasman.com, where they can see the courses and my offerings that I have there. And then I'm pretty active on my Facebook page for like Facebook Lives and other offers and stuff like that. And I think I can arrange, maybe we can put it in the show notes. I'll pass a coupon code, maybe like enlighten or something like that, where they can get a percent discount just for listening to the show and heading over to my store.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you. Yeah, to our audience, you can get the coupon code in the show notes. We'll post that
Yeah,
once Jeremy has it organized. And that's really generous of you. Thank you very much.
yeah, you're welcome. I love to do that. I want my work to get more out there, so that's gonna be great.
Well, thank you. And thank you to our audience once again for joining us this week. We love you so much and appreciate you tuning in. Uh, Take care, and we'll be back with you guys next week. Bye.
Thank you all for joining our show. We appreciate you tuning in and supporting us. If you have any questions you would like answered on the show or any guests you would like to hear on our show, please email that information to us at info@enlightenup.us. And please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And if you're interested in contacting Nicole or myself for some coaching or any of the other services we provide, you can find out more about Nicole at inflexibleme.com, and my website is lisaloveslove.com. Thank you again for joining us and supporting our show, and we will be back with you all next week.